Justice Tech Pros podcast with Dominic Crea, one of the most unique podcasts on the internet, discussing the obstacles the defense team faces when trying a case, what goes on behind the scenes during pretrial and motion phase, holding defense attorneys accountable, making sure they're fighting for their clients, the difference between textbook law and how things truly play out in a courtroom, and everything in between. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Justice Tech Pros.
Welcome back to A View from Mulberry Street. We're in the year 2023 now. Let's hope it's going to be a great year for all of us. The podcast, from me, from Neil Healy, and for all of you loyal viewers and listeners out there. Thank you for being with us for the entire year of 2022, and we hope we're going to bring you a lot of great episodes. My first 10 episodes, was about what is going on that's wrong in the federal criminal justice system when it comes to organized crime cases. And I think those first 10 episodes, if you haven't seen them, go back and look at them, because they were serious. I mean, we tried to have fun during the course of that, and we'll try to have fun today too. But I brought about to your attention some very, very, very important issues that are going on in the criminal justice system for decades, and no one cares. No one gives a hoot, because at the beginning of it all, they said, "Oh, it's only mob guys. Let the government do whatever they want." And you know what? After a period of time, it wasn't only mob guys. It's every kind of guy, okay? These people will stop at nothing to use their power. And it doesn't matter if they're Republicans, if they're Democrats, if they're socialists, if they're communists, whatever they're going to be, they're going to use these draconian laws to enforce their power and to deprive us of the liberty that our founding fathers fought for, and to deprive us of the liberty that our brave veterans and soldiers fought for in so many wars. So, today, I think we are going to embark on the most important episode of this podcast called A View from Mulberry Street. Because not only are we going to identify problems, which we have done in the past, but today we are going to make some proposals. We're going to make some proposals to try to correct the wrongs that have been done and are still being done today. And I'm not talking about just members of organized crime as the government defines them. I'm talking about all of us, okay? So, let's go. Proposal number 1. Let's get rid of mandatory minimums in the federal criminal justice system. What does that mean? A mandatory minimum takes away the discretion of the judge and the prosecutor and the defense lawyer to try to come about with a solution and a settlement to a case. Because the legislators, all right, the good old cronies who just rub elbows and make money on Capitol Hill, they've decided, we're going to be tough on crime, so we're going to have mandatory minimums. That means we take away the discretion of the judge who knows what the case is about. We take away the discretion of the prosecutors. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the prosecutors in federal court and the judges are no cream puffs. They are not giving away the courthouse steps under any circumstances ever to anybody. So taking away their discretion is to take away common sense in the criminal justice system. Mandatory minimums just create unbearable problems, not only for the defendants, but for the entire system. There's no good reason for it. It's politics. It's mixing horse bleep with ice cream. When you mix politics with the law, you are mixing horse bleep with ice cream, and it don't taste good. Okay? Proposal number 2. Instead of having mandatory minimums, how about having maximum sentences? All right? Right now in federal court, you could get up to life without parole. You could get the death penalty. There are all sorts of draconian sentences. Most cases, even the most minimal case can result in a term of imprisonment of 20 years. So why don't we try to limit, if we're going to limit judges and prosecutors, let's limit what the maximum sentence should be on any case. I don't know what the number should be. How about 25 years? Okay? That sounds a lot less than life without parole. But ladies and gentlemen, if any of you had to do 25 years, or how about 25 months, you would understand that we're talking about serious punishment. 25 years should be enough for almost any crime. I am told that in Russia even, the most serious sentence you can get is 15 years. So, anyhow, well, let's give it a look. Let our legislators try to think about doing something that's right instead of doing something that's political. Proposal number 3. Let's have a real second chance consideration for the people who have really been rehabilitated in prison and have served a period of time. I don't know how many years a person should serve before they be eligible for a second chance consideration of release. But I would say 20 years is more than enough. I know of many cases where people have been sentenced to life without parole, all right? And I know of cases, and I'm going to tell you about just one of them, where people who have been behind bars for 20, 25, 30 years have, in fact, rehabilitated themselves and deserve a second chance. But the law doesn't allow it. Is something wrong with us? Are we not able to reconsider the situation of our fellow man? Are our lawyers, our prosecutors, our judges, all right, are they not capable of taking a second look at someone after 10, 15, 20, 25 years? The case that jumps right out at me is the case of Johnny Papa, P-A-P-P-A. Johnny Papa was arrested and convicted 30 years ago of a lot of serious crimes. But I can tell you, I have never encountered a finer person in or out of jail. He is someone who is a godly person, who is an intelligent person, who is a treasure to anyone who meets him. He is someone who takes the time to help his fellow man. He is universally praised by the officials of every prison that he's been in. And yet, the law sticks him in cement and disables our ability to say to him, hey, let's take a look at you. Let's give you a second chance. And, there's been a lot of talk about giving people second chances, but it's just not happening. So let's take a hard, serious, heartfelt look at people who are in prison who have changed for the better. It is a fact. Proposal number 4. Let's send the sick old men home under house arrest and give them a restricted list. I'm talking about people who are dying in jail, people who are in federal medical facilities. They are not hospitals. You can call them hospitals, but they're not hospitals. They're not the kind of hospital that you would want to be in if you were sick. The federal medical facilities are not capable of handling any kind of serious medical problem. I mean, they give you aspirins when you have cancer. It's not their fault. They're not equipped to be a hospital. They are jails. They are prisons, all right? When you've got old men in there, people who are over 65, all right, and they need medical treatment, and they need proper medical care. And the taxpayers, you and I, we're paying to keep these federal hospitals all over the country working, and millions of dollars are being spent, and it does no good for no one. My goodness gracious. Let's give these people a chance to get back into society. Put them under house arrest with bracelets, okay? And if you're worried about who they're going to associate with, give them an association list, a non-association list. Say, oh, you can't talk to this one and you can't talk to that one. But get them the heck out of jail and get them the proper medical treatment at their own cost, not at the cost of the taxpayers. Proposal number 5. Even if someone is not sick, there's no good reason for us to have people in jail who are over 65, people in jail who have served, let's say 15 years, okay? If you don't think 15 years is a long time, well, try doing 15 days in jail. You'll be crying. You'll be, please let me out, oh no. Yeah, believe me, 15 days. If somebody's got 15 years in and they're over 65, how about sending them home, putting them under house arrest, putting them on a bracelet, and if they screw up, back to jail. Give these old people a chance if they've served some time. I'm not saying let a guy out on his first day, but if he served some time and he's old, there's no good reason why we still have to support that. You know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars that we, the taxpayers, are spending to keep these old men in jail. Anyhow, by the way, why not send everybody over 65 home and put them under house arrest? Even if they're not sick, okay? Put them in chains in their house. Why should we be supporting all these prisons? Nothing good happens in prison. Should there be exceptions? Sure. That's why we have congressmen and legislators. But all our legislators do, whether they're federal or state, they only care about themselves. They only care about being reelected so that they can pilfer society, all right? Put money in their pocket. They don't care about us. They don't care about doing what's right for the country. They don't even think about it. It's time that we force them to think about it. Let's start electing people who want to serve instead of be served. No more pre-trial detention. Up until 1987, with the Bail Reform Act of 1987, the Constitution of the United States provided that reasonable bail must be set. And all of a sudden, they passed a law that threw that out the window, all right, in certain circumstances. You could just detain people, all right? You detain them with no bail. Oh, you're a mafia boss. You don't get any bail. You have to, even though you're not convicted of anything yet, you have to be in jail for 1, 2, 3 years until your case is called on the docket. You know, sometimes, and I could tell you as a criminal defense lawyer, sometimes the government arrests people, all right, puts them in jail, knowing that they're going to beat the case eventually, but knowing they'll have them in jail for 1, 2, and 3 years. It's just not fair. And they don't only do this to the people that they have defined as being part of organized crime. They do it to anyone they feel like doing it to. So let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of pretrial detention, and let's go back to the Constitution of the United States, which guarantees bail. I'll never forget a young woman who was the relative of a defendant I was representing, said to me, I went to school. I read about the Eighth Amendment. They can't keep someone in jail without bail. Well, it was after 1987, and I told her, you got it all wrong. I'm sorry. You should be right, but they have the authority now to do it. So let's go backwards in time and go back to a time where we had respect for individual liberty. People shouldn't be detained without bail when they haven't been convicted of a crime yet. They deserve a chance. And today we have the technology. We have the technology, all right, to keep people under house arrest. We could electronically monitor them. We have GPS systems that could show where you're going inside your house. Oh, he's in the bathroom now. Oh, he's in the kitchen now. Okay. Oh, he's throwing the garbage out now. They can actually monitor you to that extent. So why don't we do that instead of spitting in the face of the Constitution? Next proposal. When people do go to jail, let's make a better effort to keep them, to keep that inmate as close to home as possible. For example, in New York City, where I live, the closest facilities are Danbury, Connecticut, and Fort Dix, New Jersey. Not everyone from New York City can go there, all right? I have had clients sent out to Lompoc, California, to Texas, to Terre Haute, Indiana, to Marion, Illinois, all over Pennsylvania, down to Leavenworth, Kansas. I have traveled the entire scope of the 48 states visiting people in prison. And let me tell you, there are heartbreaking stories. I have a heartbreaking story in my own family where my uncle was away in jail, and he had 4 little kids, the oldest being 4 years old. He had a mother who had cancer. Do you know how difficult it was to visit him in Terre Haute, Indiana? Do you know how expensive it was to do that? And an extreme burden on family life. I think that we want people who have to be incarcerated to have a place to go when they come home. I think it's important for people who are in jail to be able to maintain a close relationship with their families, with their mother and their father, and with their children especially. I think it's important to keep marriages together, okay? And by sending people thousands of miles away from home, you not only punish the inmate, but you punish the families. And so much hardship has been caused by the federal government by deliberately, and I mean deliberately, sending people as far away from home as they can. Proposal number 8. When someone is sentenced, do not allow them being the government, do not allow the government to give that defendant more time than the judges should for a small crime, based upon what is called acquitted conduct. Okay? Let me explain what acquitted conduct is. But first, let me say, I had planned to do this episode a few weeks ago, and only today this appeared in none other than the Daily News. It looks like, finally, maybe, the Supreme Court of the United States is going to examine again the issue of whether, when a jury acquits someone, and they say you are not guilty of this crime, under the present status of federal law, people are sentenced for small crimes to big sentences because the judges are allowed to use their discretion in sentencing to overrule the jury and to say, well, the jury has a standard of proof. That standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. And the law right now is allowing judges to use another standard, a preponderance of evidence, to say to a defendant, you have been found not guilty by a jury, but because I think, by a preponderance of the evidence, that you are guilty, I am going to slam you with as much time as I can on a little bitsy crime, okay? A little bitsy crime. We're going to give you as much as we can. We're going to slam you to the mat because I believe you're guilty and I don't have to follow the jury's ruling. So why should we have jury trials? Why don't the jurors be informed of what can happen in these cases? It's unbelievable. As soon as the jurors leave the courthouse, the judge turns around a couple of weeks later and says, well, I'm throwing that all aside in terms of what my sentence would be. My sentence allows me, my power to sentence people, allow me to just forget that they were acquitted of the crimes. This is ridiculous. And, it disrespects the verdict of the jurors. Number 9, next proposal. Judges at sentence should not be able to consider relevant conduct. What is relevant conduct? Relevant conduct are things that the government brings to the judge's attention for which the defendant has not been convicted of, he has not been indicted for, he has not been arrested for. But the federal prosecutors can go to the judge in a case at the time of sentence and say, Judge, this man committed 6 murders. He wasn't convicted of any. He wasn't indicted on any. He wasn't arrested for any. But we know that, we investigated him. And we have a right, and they do, under the law, they have a right to bring that up to the judge. And you know what else? The judge has a right to consider that. He could say, oh, yeah, I consider that. Yeah, that's happened. That's happened to me in so many situations. It happened to Carmine Persico, who I represented at the end of his life. When he was sentenced, they brought up the murder of Carmine Galante. And the judge said, even though you were not convicted of the murder of Carmine Galante, even though you are not indicted or arrested for that murder, even though it's not part of your case, the government says that you are part of that conspiracy to kill Carmine Galante based on the folklore. We're going to get to that in another episode. Based on the folklore that you can't kill a boss unless the commission has to approve it, which in another episode, I'm going to invalidate that nonsense once and for all. But in Carmine Persico's case, when the judge sentenced him to 100 years for a bid rigging case, he should have gotten 10 years if he was guilty. By the way, Carmine Persico was in jail during the whole period of time that these so-called crimes were being committed. Yet, he was held vicariously liable under the RICO law. Listen, we could go on and on and on, but we're not talking about baby stuff here. We're talking about 100 years. We're talking about dying in jail. And then later on, 30 years later, Joseph Massino, who declared himself when he became a cooperator, he said, I was the boss of what you guys call the Bonanno family. And when I was a little bit younger, I received the word to execute Carmine Galante. And it didn't come from any commission. That was all nonsense. Carmine Persico had nothing to do with Carmine Galante's murder. The order, according to Joe Massino, he said the order came from Phil Rastelli, my boss. It has nothing to do with anybody. It was an internal affair. Okay, so now we have a combination of factors here. We have folklore turned inside out, all right? We have the government being able to bring up things to a judge for which a defendant hasn't been accused, and the judge has the right to consider it. So he gives Carmine Persico, Junior Persico, 100 years. 100 years. And 30 years later, their own informant, a man that they spent $10 million, $20 million trying to convict. They finally convict him by flipping 8 guys, and eventually Joe Massino becomes an informant, and he tells them that all this is all nonsense. What they said about Carmine Galante was nonsense. What they said about Junior Persico was wrong, okay? Could they take it back? Do you get back those years? Especially when you're dead. Wow. These are all things that happen. By the way, while I'm at it, I mean, I have known so many cases where people who have beaten, they have been acquitted on murder charges. And 2 cases come to my mind. One is a dear friend of mine, my neighbor, a guy that the government was after for years because they wanted him to be a cooperator. And he didn't want to be a cooperator. I'm talking about Frank Guerra, also known as BF. BF went to trial. He beat 2 murder cases. He beat 4 RICO charges. He beat 4 regular charges and got convicted of being involved in a conspiracy to sell his own OxyContin pills that was based on the testimony of an incredible, unreliable rat. Anyhow, the right sentence for that should have been, at worst, 3 or 4 years. We were asking for 2 years, 18 months, okay? The judge gives him 14 years, and she says on the record, I'm giving you that amount of time because I believe that you were guilty of the murder charges, even though the jury resoundingly acquitted him of the murder charges and all the other charges, okay? This is how the criminal justice system gets so distorted, and it has to stop. Another case like that is the case of Tommy Shots, Thomas Gioeli. Tommy Gioeli was accused of numerous murders and other serious crimes. The jury acquitted him of almost everything, all the murders, out the window. The jury said, this is BS, out, forget it. You're not guilty. And what does the judge do? Well, I believe you're part of the mafia, you're dangerous, and because you got convicted of this little bitty crime, we're going to slam you. I don't know if he got 17 or 20 years. This guy's languishing in jail yet with cancer, and they won't let him out, even though he's got cancer. This is disgusting. This has to stop. Someone has to do something about it, and it has to be us. And all the stuff that I'm talking to you about relating to what the prosecutors can bring up at sentence, well, not only can they bring up all these things which were unproven, but they could actually mention all these things during the trial. Crimes that are not charged in the indictment, they could bring them up. They say, it proves a certain pattern of activity. And so the jurors are being prejudiced by crimes that are not even charged in the indictment. Can you imagine that? That's been going on for decades. When will it stop? Could it stop? Is it possible it will stop? You see this case over here? Thank God that it's not an Italian guy who is the defendant and the petitioner. Because if it were an Italian guy, the papers go right in the basket, right in the garbage pail. But because it's someone from down south, someone who's not Italian, maybe there's a chance that there could be some law put on the books now to reverse all this junk. It's terrible. It's got to stop. What else? Proposal number 10. The government, this is a good one, the government should not be able to give rats, cooperators, a free ride for murder and other serious crimes. I say to you, they will say to us, we need to have cooperators to make the case. We have to give them something. Well, you don't have to give them a walk for 19 murders. What you do is you give them a 1-level reduction under the sentencing guidelines. Give them 3-4 years off, okay? But they shouldn't be able to walk away. A 1-level reduction in sentence would be sufficient for cooperation. To use these creeps and to stop giving them walks and paying them. They get paid. These cooperators, they admit it on the stand. They get paid a lot of money to testify. Now, I ask you, please, ladies and gentlemen, if Matthew Mary or any defense lawyer, if defense lawyers could pay witnesses to testify, what would happen? It would be a crime. We'd be locked up. We'd be in jail. But the government does it every day. They pay them. They give them money, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And not only relocate them, they put them in business. They give them new names, new identities, all phony ID. Unbelievable. And let me tell you something. These rats, they're laughing at the government. They love to manipulate them, and they're doing a great job. You have to give them credit for that. Manipulating the government. Proposal number 11. Rats must be cross-examined about every aspect of their lives and not be protected from being questioned. What are you talking about, Matt? What does that mean? What it does mean is that some of these cooperators, the prosecutors make a motion. They call it a motion in limine. And they say, we're going to limit the defense lawyer from cross-examining this guy about beating the heck out of his wife, all right? About being a domestic violator. No, you can't. That has nothing to do with anything. They stop you from cross-examining them. They put the brakes on you. Bad enough these guys are lying through their teeth. When they stop you, they tell you, we're telling you in advance, counselor, don't you dare try to ask questions about this or that could uncover who this guy really is, that he's a skunk. Listen, that's got to change. If you're going to use these rats, you've got to let the lawyers cross-examine them. Don't be stopping the lawyers from the constitutional right of confrontation. We're going further and further away from the Constitution every day. And by doing that, it's the end of this country, okay? It's not about me. It's not about my clients. It's about the survival of this country. Number 12, here's a great idea. If sex offenders are required to register in the communities where they live, then why does the government not require dangerous killers who are their cooperators? Why doesn't the government warn their neighbors in their new communities where they have a new identity? The next door neighbors, they're not told who's living next door. Is that right? You're told, oh, this guy has a sex offense record. He called someone on the phone. He got caught with pornography. Okay? But these killers, government informants, all right? Government cooperators, they're living next door to you, and you're not allowed to know anything. You're not allowed to know their identity. They get to keep their illegal money. They move to Arizona, get a new name, and start all over again in a life of crime. And if you don't think that that's the truth, that has happened in the cases of Sammy the Bull Gravano and Frank Gioia Jr. out in Arizona. All right, that's a matter of public record. Guys go, they get a new life, and they start a new life of crime, okay? And no one knows who they are. Coming to a close, Proposal 14. Let the jurors who are on trial on a case, let the jurors know what kind of sentences the defendants are facing. Do you know that in cases where I've had clients who are facing 20 years, maybe even life, that the jurors, when you talk to them after the case, they think that these people have a possibility of probation? I am not joking. That they have no clue because the law of the land is that the jurors are not allowed to consider that. I think the jurors should be able, before they find someone guilty, I think they should be able to know what the possible ranges in sentencing are, okay? If someone's facing life without parole, if someone's facing 20 years, the jurors should know what the consequences of their verdict is. And there's no reason why that shouldn't happen. Number 15. all right? This will never happen. We could live 1,000 years. Number 15 proposal. Delete the RICO law entirely from the books. Banish the RICO law. Erase it. Throw it in the fire. Because there's no way in the world that a person could get a fair trial, all right, when the government is allowed to bring 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different crimes unrelated to each other in the same case. And they're allowed to put you together with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 defendants, some of whom you don't even know, who are charged with different kinds of crimes, but they put you in the same enterprise. The enterprise! You're in it. If you're in it, you're dead meat. The court system means nothing. If they define you as a member of organized crime, they put you in a RICO case, you are dead meat, all right? I'm telling you. That's the truth, all right? What else should they do? They should modify the conspiracy laws. The conspiracy laws have been on the books for a long time. But the conspiracy laws allows the government to convict you, okay, of a serious crime, no matter how small your role is, okay? And so if you could be convicted of bank robbery, even if you never robbed the bank. You could be convicted of bank robbery if you didn't try to rob the bank. You could be convicted of bank robbery if you just agreed to do. I'll do that. Yeah, you want to do it? Hey, Matt, would you like to rob a bank, First National City Bank? Yeah, I think I'd like to do that. That's enough. I go home, never do nothing again. You're dead. You're dead meat because it's the law, the conspiracy laws. And you say, oh boy, they don't use that often. They use it every day. They wouldn't have any convictions if they didn't have the conspiracy law, if they didn't have the RICO Act, if they didn't have cooperators who lie and march off to paradise. The cooperators march off to paradise. All right? So a lot of changes have to be done. In the first 10 episodes of this series called A View from Mulberry Street, we very seriously identified a lot of the problems that exist, and we've re-identified them today. But today, I'm offering some solutions. Do I really believe that all this, what I am proposing, will happen? No, I don't believe it. But I think it's high time that the people out there understand what's going on in the federal courts and demand that our Congress people, our United States senators, and the people in the House of Representatives understand what is going on and demand that we have a change. We have a change that goes back in time to constitutional government, to constitutional guarantees. Go back to a time when people could get a fair trial in federal court. That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying my clients are angels. I'm not saying the government's so bad. I'm saying that the laws are upside down. The laws are inside out, and no one has cared for decades. And now it's just our justice system is just rotting away, and it's becoming as a country, we're becoming complacent in what goes on. No one cares until it happens to you. So before it happens to you, get on the phone, write a letter to your congressman, tell them we want some criminal justice reform, and not ridiculous stuff, just stuff like I'm talking about today. And that happens to be our view from Mulberry Street today.